good morning, everybody. And first of all, a big thanks to TOC for letting us organize this panel here in collaboration between TIC 4.0 and Boston Consulting Group. I will just explain how we started a kind of a partnership with Boston Consulting Group on the topic of digitalization in the terminal sector. And I was approached by David last year as we wanted to elaborate digital benchmark for the ports and terminal industry. And we've been working on this for the past months. It seemed very natural to me that we extend this then by also organizing together with BCG as TIC 4.0 a series of panels and presentations at different industry events to also bring more awareness to the topic of digitalization. As many of you know, in the sector, we are quite late with regards to adoption of 4.0 technologies and in implementation of digital transformation compared to other sectors. And this is why we're here today, is we want to see and discuss what is the state today and how we are progressing with it. So now I would like to ask David to come on stage. David will give you David Parlong from BCG will give you a quick overview of this digital benchmark, and after that we'll invite, you can see we have a very prestigious panel today that will join us on stage, and I hope we'll have an interesting discussion for the next hour and a half or so. So David, please.
Thank you very much, Boris, for the words of introduction. So let me do a first intro also from my side, and then we will start the discussion with our guests, our panelists. Can we have the presentation, please? So, just as a first intro, as all of you know, we are at a ticking point in terms of digitalization in our industry. The way we typically look at it at BCG is by looking at different stages of development of digital maturity in a sector, and we are within the port industry at what we call the scaling phase. What you see here is a bit how we tend to position the port industry versus other ones. We lie a bit behind if you compare to other transportation. A good example of that is your own experience of last mile business and where the type of digitalization you will get when you will get a parcel to your home. Typically within our terminal business, software have been here for a long time, as well as automation of terminal, but we are just starting to see a level of maturity of collaboration between the various stakeholders. We just start to see the impact of AI on operation, and we also are just starting to see how data can bring new business opportunities for terminal operators as well as for OEMs. So it's really a ticking point in the industry, thus the need for a wider collaboration, thus also the importance to raise the level of awareness around best practices in our industry and foster the use of digital standards for all of the stakeholders in the industry to be able to connect together and to share data and to really create value around that. As mentioned already by Boris, we are launching a joint benchmarking exercise. We have already some of the largest operators of the market who are joining our effort. What is it about? It's about building a benchmarking exercise about the maturity of different terminal operations, both from technical angles, where we have 6 pillars of assessing the level of maturity on various dimensions, but also understanding how CEOs and CTOs are positioning the digital strategy as part of the wider growth business strategy of the group, as well as performance improvement. So what we will be doing with Boris and his teams is working with terminal operators to produce 2 types of things, both a global document enabling, which will be a public one that all of you will get, that will showcase what are the best practices and a bit what is the level of maturity of digitalization in the industry. And for the participant of the benchmark, they will also get far more detailed analysis of what their digitalization within their own portfolio look like and how it benchmarks to competitor. So So you will get this information, and we hope to jointly contribute to improving the awareness and knowledge around digitalization in the sector in the coming month, thanks to this benchmark. If some of you are willing to join, please contact us. I will give us our email at the end of the presentation if you want to be part of this ongoing effort. Today we have built for you a very nice panel to discuss 4 topics. So the topics are about talking a bit where we stand in terms of digitalization transformation of the industry, to understand a bit what it creates in terms of new opportunities and new paradigm within our industry. We want, of course, to discuss the question of interoperability, because collaboration is of the essence between OEMs, terminal operators, maritime company, logistic player for the inbound and outbound transportation, as well as beneficial cargo owners. So in order for these various stakeholders to collaborate together, standardization is key. And so we will discuss this topic. And last but not least, we want to discuss a bit also with the various stakeholders the impact of digitalization of the ways of working within our industry. So what does this change from management to operators in terms of their daily life, in terms of safety, in terms of capabilities that people in our industry need to have to take and leverage the benefit of digitalization? In order to have a bit the different point of view, we have gathered a panel with different participants. So we will have a specialist of operations with Jack Craig, who is the global head of operation at IPMT, and Maxime Mihic, who is global executive VP operation and engineering at DPW. We will get also the perspective of OEMs with David Mosberger, who is GM and CTO of Kunz, so on the crane side of the business. Harry Nguyen, CEO and founder of Real Time Business Solution, a company focusing on TOS and digital twins, so every type of software around the TOS ecosystem will give us the perspective of a software provider. Robert Yildirim, that all of you know, who is the CEO and president of Hillport, will give us the perspective of a CEO and an investor in port. Which type of value does it bring for CEOs and head of port business digitization? And last but not least, Boris, that you already met, will be the representative of TIC, and will be particularly focused and bringing us perspective on the question of interoperability and standardization within our industry. Now I will invite our prestigious guests to join me on stage, and we will start the discussion in a minute. Thank you very much for your attention. So let's start by talking about the status of digitalization in the industry, what it brings in terms of value, and also how the digitalization of terminal operation interact with the wider digitalization agenda of wider groups. We will start with Maxime from DPW. And Maxime, I would like to hear you about what is a bit the status of digitalization within your group, and I'm also particularly interested to understand how the digitalization on the terminal side of the business interacts with the wider digitalization roadmap of DPW. In your group, you also have feedering operations, you also have free zones. So can you put a bit in perspective the digitization efforts within the terminal business with the wider efforts within DPW?
Okay, good. Can you hear me? Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I was on this stage yesterday at 4:30, and we were talking about decarbonization. So if you really survey the hot topic on this TOC is decarbonization and digitalization. And as I was preparing for this kind of panel, I was struck how similarly the problems are on the both sides, right? On the decarbonization, we are trying to challenge the emission to replacing diesel, essentially as a source of energy, 150 years old industry, and we are setting the target for us to 2030. It's a pretty big challenge, and facing essentially same challenge: standardization, lack of guidance and standards, and all those stuff. On the digital side, we are facing the similar challenge. We are transiting from people enterprise to generative AI enterprise, right? We are all experiencing vendor centralization, central purchasing, standardization, offshoring, nearshoring, and those are all people enterprise trick that we all did to a certain extent. Now we are moving to this generative AI when we are trying to outsource certain task to the machine, essentially, and that's a very short period. And as you presented, we are a little bit behind to the certain industry, media, technology, and the banking sector, for example, right? So, from our perspective, you asked the question where we are comparing to the probably competition and all those stuff. I know where we were last Friday. I don't know where we are today, and that's how fast it's moving. But from the perspective of the terminal operators, we do concentrate in a certain verticals, which is ports and terminals where I came from, but we are pushing equally on the all levels, on all verticals, which is the logistics and the marine and the parks. So if you zoom a little bit what we are doing on the ports and terminals, we are in pretty much in all elements. The one is the operational technology. You see Box Bay, we are heavily involved in that. It couldn't get much digitalized on the operational level than that one. And then going up, we have terminal operating system, we have the port community systems and all those elements. If you look a little bit more, for example, on integration on the bigger level, like sea rates would be a good example where we integrated all those services, where we have through sea rates, we offer like a 10,000 routes when you can actually assemble services that you want, not necessarily through us. We pull 45,000 freight forwarders and about 400,000 exporters in the same. So that's a kind of from the ground level to the big one. So again, I wouldn't dare compare us to the other operators. Our business is a little bit different, but I'm very pleased that we are benchmarking ourselves against other industry and internally, so we all get guidance from there. So that's from my side.
Maybe, Jack, how does the element shared by Maxime resonate with you?
Yeah, so maybe just to pick up on a theme that Maxim started with, obviously we're talking a lot about both digitalization and decarbonization. And in our world, we've got a very clear view that we need to do both of these things. And for us, we actually see them being mutually enabling, right? There is a need for us to operate differently as we continue to introduce a lot of decarbonization solutions, battery operated CHE and electrified RTGs and whatever it might be. And to be able to operate that equipment as efficiently as possible, there is a digitalization aspect to this that is important for us to drive those efficiencies. So the old days of having somebody drive a UTR around or a tractor trailer around and pull in, get the flashing red light that they're out of gas and suddenly they need to refuel, those days are going to be gone. And it really is about the digitalization of the battery management systems tied into what's happening with the rest of your operational planning and your operational activity in real time to best understand how to move these assets around most cost effectively and efficiently for us. I think the other thing where it really enables APMO or MERS overall strategy, and I think a really good example of this is what my friend and colleague Karina talked about yesterday in one of the other panels, and the extreme level of tie-in that we have in our hubs between us and MERS line and increasingly what will be the Gemini network in the future. The amount of data share and planning that is enabled between us and the steamship lines, not just Maersk and Hapag, but others as well, in terms of being able to look forward with regards to berth planning and yard strategies. This is all a significant step level change from where we were, say, just 2 years ago. So I think, we should be, at least a bit satisfied with where we're at right now. But as everybody knows, we are so far behind what norms would be outside of our industry. There's still a long way for us to go.
Thank you very much. Very clear. Sorry. Let me now ask a question to Robert. Robert, you own a very diversified portfolio of terminals all around the world, exposed to various types of commodities. Can you tell us a bit, when you look at a new investment in a terminal, what is the importance of digitalization? What do you think it can bring? Is it a question of automation, cost-cutting, efficiency, or is it also a question of value for the customers? And do you see things changing compared to 10 years ago? What is your perspective as an investor and a CEO?
Good morning. My answer is all of the above. Digitalization is part of our life. You know, today we are addicted to our smartphones, like no one can leave the house without it. So the ports are pretty much the similar situation. Now digitalization is a must. We cannot operate the terminal without investing the technology and especially the digitalization. But I have to make maybe a little bit decoupling in the industry. I'm an independent port operator. When I look at the role model in the industry, it's like DP World, Hutchison, you know, these are non-liner. And we are all focusing in our customers, customer service, how to satisfy the customers, how to give them a better service, productivity, all these things. And when you look at for example, except the APMT, I have to put them aside, but other liner, they have their ports, they're more focused on the productivity, how fast they load or discharge the vessels, and that's it. They want to make money on the vessel side, box side, but we focus on our ports. So for that reason, we need to keep the customers happy. We need to satisfy them with all our services, and they want everything now. They cannot wait, so we need to give them what they want. So the best thing is the digitalization, so they have the full control in the terminal, where their boxes is, when it's coming in, when it's going out, or whatever the data they want. So we must invest in the digitalization. So when I go investing in a new terminal, first thing I look at it, what the upsides are in the business. And when most of the suffering terminals do not have a good equipment and digitalization. So first thing we do, how to bring the productivity up and attract the customers. So that's why we focus more the digitalization first, then the decarbonization. But everything we do, it's for just making money. If we cannot make money, we cannot invest in digitalization, we cannot invest in the others. So the answer to your question is yes, we must be different than other port owners. We are not public terminals, we are private, and we are not owned by the liners. So we need to serve the liners, we need to serve the customers, exporters, importers, and all these people in this exhibition today, they are putting all the tools and equipment just for the ports, not for the liners. Liners is little bit, but so this is the game. We come here, catch up with technology, bring the terminals' productivity, efficiency up to satisfy all the customers. So ports are keep investing, and all these vendors here, they want to keep introduce something new. So the game is we earn and spend, we earn and spend. At the end, we are all serving to the customers. That's what our game or the focus to unlock the opportunities for customers. Our customers are first liner and importer, exporters, and the rest. So,
thank you, Robert. Very clear. Interesting difference of perspective for an independent port operator. Also, serving the importer and exporter are also important stakeholders, and that's kind of different from let's say container operators that are very focused on the relationship with liners. Let's talk a bit about collaboration, Boris. What strikes me when I talk to my colleagues at BCG who are serving over vertical is that when we talk about digitization in our industry, the number of stakeholders involved is crazy. When you talk with, let's say, last mile people, when Amazon wants to track its parcel, that's about collaboration between Amazon and, in a given country, 3-4 parcel delivery companies. That's all. If they connect and they get tracking data, you can all get on your data information on where your parcel sits. In our case, if you want to have a functioning digitization in the terminal industry, you need OEMs working with port terminal operators, with port authority, with logistic company, with liners, with BCOs, with tax authorities, etc., etc. So it makes it incredibly complex, and especially when everybody has its own IT systems with data that are not interoperable. Then you have a lot of stakeholders which are unable to talk to each other. So maybe Boris, I think this challenge are at the heart of what made you create TIC 4.0. Can you tell us a bit more? How can we accelerate digital collaboration and foster common work to overcome these challenges?
Well, thank you, David. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think what also characterizes our industry is that you have a lot of very different stakeholders. And when you look at it from the perspective of digitalization, it means you have data which actually has to be aggregated from a lot of these very different sources. And this is why there is really maybe it's one of the reasons why it's difficult for our industry to progress as fast as other industries in the path of digitalization, because all these different sources of data, when you aggregate them, you actually need to make sure that the understanding of the data is the same for everybody, that you don't have different interpretation. Okay, and this is what led us to actually create TIC 4.0. Actually, it's I'm accidentally involved in this because I worked with engineers who saw more clearly the picture of why we need, in fact, to create this collaboration forum, which TIC 4.0 is, and define what will be in the future our industry standards. I mean, most industries have their standards. We are, very. It's very actually funny to say that we are the most standardized industry when you talk about container handling. We handle 20 and 40-foot boxes. But when you look inside our business, we are absolutely not standardized at all. And what we had found out is you will talk to a person running a terminal in one country, and then in another one, even the understanding of what the most common activity of the terminal is, which is to move a box. It doesn't really have the same meaning. Okay, so when you think about how do we gonna then transition to have it to a digital transformation of what a move is, I mean, first you need to make sure that everybody understands a move as being exactly the same thing. Otherwise, you're gonna digitalize very different meanings, and that means you're gonna put garbage in and get garbage in what comes out. So this is precisely what has led us to try to bring, and this is what TIC 4.0 is all about. For those who don't know it, it's to bring together the terminal operators with those who supply them equipment, technology, and solutions, and that we therefore bring different perspectives to first give a unique meaning to data. And what we've evolved to quite rapidly in the context of digitalization is that we actually create a common data language with common definitions, that allow, in fact, then every type of system, equipment, etc., to speak that same language. This, in turn, will make digitalization much easier. It removes one big obstacle, not all of them, but one big obstacle. And that's why when David showed that graph at the beginning, once we as an industry adopt common industry standards, then we'll be able to move much faster up that graph to catch up with banking, for example.
Thank you, Boris. David, I'm curious to hear you about this notion of collaboration, and maybe as a joke. My feeling is that when we talk about collaboration in the industry, you talk to terminal operators, they will tell you, I would like to collaborate a lot, but these guys from OEMs, they kept their data for themselves. They don't want to share and work with us. When you talk to OEMs, sometimes it's about, yes, we have data from our own equipment, but we don't have visibility, and thus difficult to collaborate. And when I'm serving governments and I ask a port authority, what about a global initiative on their ports? Usually they will tell you it's so difficult to collaborate with private players on my terminal. So that's a bit a joke, but I think that collaboration is also a lot about the willingness of the various stakeholders to work together. So can you tell us a bit your perspective as one of the leading crane company with respect to how you manage to create this positive environment and dynamic with your clients to work together on data and leverage this data for them and for you?
Yeah, thanks, David. Good questions. I mean, a little bit about the history, how we got started. I mean, I just looked up yesterday in order to prepare myself for today when we started with digitalization, and that was about 8 years ago. And since 8 years, we are talking about who are the owners of data. I usually don't get any more, involved in that because I think it doesn't matter who the owners are. If we are just discussing who the owners are, we will not make use of it. So again, we started 8 years ago, and back then our goal was to become a better company. And a better company is for us having the cranes available in the terminals. And if you are not connected to the cranes, you are always just reacting instead of acting. So you are always behind. And that was one of our use cases which we had in mind back then. The second one was we want to build cranes for the future. And when we look in the history, we need to know what the cranes are doing. That's our basics that we need to be able to really create new developments, new cranes for our customers. So those were the two use cases which we had in mind, and that's how we got started. And of course, in order to do that, we need to collaborate. And in collaboration, I mean not only the ladder upwards, which in our case are the operators. I also think downwards with our suppliers. And I think it is one thing is the common language, 100% agreed. We recognize that, but we also shouldn't discuss anymore. Can we get the data, or from our side, do we allow our suppliers to get data? For me, when we want to improve the efficiency in their terminal, that question needs to be answered with 100% yes. And if we don't do that, then it's basically we have an interruption in the supply chain and we cannot do a lot. So the collaboration in the year 2024, in my opinion, shouldn't be discussed anymore. It needs to be clear that we need to collaborate, otherwise we are lost.
Thank you, thank you for this perspective on the challenge of getting this collaboration working, and sometimes the hurdle you have to overcome. I think it leads to a natural question, which is, once you collaborate, exchange data, what is the value you can create based on that? And on that one, I would like to have your perspective, Harry. I mean, your company is historically focused on TOC. You are very well known for that. And now you have developed full suite of solutions, digital twins, etc., building on this core data. So my feeling is that there are like basics core data that you get through collaboration, and then there is a whole empire or world of value you can create based on that. Can you tell us a bit how you see the value that you can create, how you measure that, and what you can do once you have overcome this hurdle of exchanging data?
Thank you, David, and good morning, everyone. Nowadays, probably we have been through the terminal operation for almost 50 years. All the terminal have tons and tons of data, but for past 5 years or 10 years ago, we talk a lot about BI. Now we talk about Gen AI. So it's a different level. BI only gives you idea and concept. Gen AI gives you the idea and solution. Okay, but how we utilize that in the terminal? It will create the huge impact in the terminal operation. So what all our colleagues talk here, we focus on the efficiency, CO2 reduction, cost and benefit, etc. But how we use that data via the chain of Gen AI. I just step away from the Gen AI for now, a little minute. And if you look and they do the revolution for the last few years about the OpenAI, for example, that's where it started to create the Gen AI. In many years ago, when we research something, me research something personally, I had to go to bookshop, I go to library, I go to internet, I go to Google and search everything else. It took me a lot of time. Or if I buy 100 books, it's still 100 books. But today, with the ChatGPT, for example, I go to ChatGPT, I search for 1,000 books, million books in my fingertip. It will speed up my research and development a lot. Now I get back to the terminal. In the same context, the terminal has a massive data, but how we use it, okay, that will create a huge impact in your operation. I give you an example of the use case from what we develop as well. If you want to see what happened to the equipment tomorrow, or what happened to the vessel coming tomorrow, how many resources I have, how many equipment I have, how much time I have. If as a human, we only do guessing. Oh, last year or last week I do the same with X number of equipment, X number of resource, X number of cheese. But if we use the data which was before in history, with the Gen AI, we support you, the path and the channel and the concept and the context, what is possible. So it gives it more precise prediction rather than human guessing by memory. Okay, so that's one typical case. How about the preventative maintenance for equipment, for example? How about the battery, we call the electrification? A human cannot say, oh, maybe that run out battery, maybe this one needs to change the time, maybe I need to maintain on this because it's coming. But when you see every single factor of a terminal, it's the interrelation, interdependent. So they know one factor stands under a single thing. I take one example. When I do one move from A to B sounds simple, right? But that A have a lot of interdependency for equipment, for container, for data, for the handle, from availability, for distance, for bottleneck, from congestion. Wow, how human can handle that, right? With the Gen AI, it's not one factor, but it incorporate thousands of factors happen at the same time at that moment in real time. Human cannot handle that. Doesn't matter you employ 1 people or 1,000 people, 1,000 planners, it's still not possible. It's still restricted. So Gen AI will help you to do that. Okay, give you a lot of idea and concept, a lot of path, a lot of history, and a lot of prediction. But one thing important, if you deploy or employ the Gen AI, one thing very important you have to keep in mind. What we learn, like ChatGPT, is deep learning, machine learning, is what we learn. Today, what we behave is what we do from what we learn. But what we need is a future. Because future is a solution. When we see a second before, like I step away a bit. One of the TV in Australia, when I saw the TV, one of the famous surgeon, he do a surgery. And the patient, he's very famous. He saved many people about a brain surgery. And coincidentally, at that one moment, he made a mistake. He cut one wrong nerve for the little kid, and the kid died. Now, I use that analogy into the term operation. If I know, if he know that 1 second before the knife, he cut that nerve, he would not cut it. The kid will survive. Put that in terminal perspective. In 5 minutes, my equipment, my trailer or my AGV carry container from A to B. If I know that in the 5 minutes later, that will create a congestion, that will create the bottleneck, that will create a suffering, and etc., etc. Then what do I do before that? That's very important. So future give you what you need, it's not today. Today, what could react rather than the proactive. So that is my personal point of view about Gen AI. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. I think we had a good sequence here. David talking about the fact that willingness of work together is key, and you have to overcome a bit the first resistance in terms of, do I want to share my data? Boris explaining the importance of having shared standards, because if you share your data but you don't have the same understanding of the parameter, data means nothing. And then Harry explaining that once you have exchange your data in a format which everybody can understand, then you can create value. So I think we have a great sequence between these three gentlemen in terms of how things might happen in time. Let us now move to our second topic, which is, once we have talked about what it takes to create these opportunities around data, what does it bring to terminal operators and to the terminal industry? And on that one, I would like to ask you, Maxime. I mean, it's clear that from the physical perspective, ports are nodes. That's where goods come from and where they depart from. You can think about metaphorically in terms of data. You also have webs of data. Do you think that this type of opportunities and things we discuss can enable ports to be nodes also in terms of data? And I will also be interested in understanding if you think that at a point it will also create business opportunities for you. Do you think that at a point DPW will sell digital products to its clients?
Oh, thank you. Very interesting question. I can give you probably 2 examples on that one. Can a port be a node? I can give you an example of Jebel Ali, for example. It is the node, because in Jebel Ali we move almost 15 million TEUs. Just for everyone in the room, 15 million TEUs. Germany, entire German economy moves 14 million, and UK 10 million. So we are the node, and then we are supported by about 8,000 businesses in Jebel Ali free zone. So if you look from the point of digitalization and what we are trying to address in there, it's a paperless trade. We essentially run the Dubai trade and the terminal from the same database called Promise, which is our internal software. That's one extreme. But for my personal experience, I moved to Dubai 10 months ago. And lots of people think that Dubai advantages the trade or the oil and everything. Dubai is very, very advanced. I live in Canada for 30 years in digitalization. And then I essentially did not fill any paper in any form in the 10 months that I'm in here. And it's actually, there's a reason for that, because United Arab Emirates has 9.5 million people, 8.5 come from outside. And if you check everyone's passport and put a stamp, as we are doing here or probably in Canada in a certain way, we'll never get those people 5 times in and out. It's a seamless way of addressing. And they embrace very early in digitalization. I think 2012, and then it was an initiative in there. My second example for can be a nod is my experience from Canada. I was a CEO for a Canadian operation for 15 years, and our head office was in Vancouver, and then Vancouver is the largest port in Canada, and actually handles 52% of the containers that enter Canadian market out of 7 million. And in that case, it's not a nod, it's a risk. Because for years we were investing in infrastructure and trying to address the challenges by building more and a railway and everything. And then we have a flood that we didn't record in engineering books and took everything away, which exposed the country to a bigger risk. So in Canadian way or in that case it should be a nod, but the digitalization will address different issue. It's a resupply, eliminating the risk, and making sure that the customer have an option in there. So in conclusion, I would say depends what you are trying to address. Dubai digitalization is put with the heavy immigration, 90%, and in Canadian case, it would be risk of supply and the rerouting supply to the consumer center in Toronto and Montreal. So that's my perspective, two different parts of the world.
Thank you. Harry, any remark? What does the statements of Maxime raise in terms of remark from your side?
I think the digitalization is very important. Okay, data is the vehicle of the information technology. Without data, information doesn't exist. Okay, because information data is correlated and it has the same meaning. So the data standardization and digitalization is extremely important in industry for the optimization, for the efficiency, for the CO2 reduction, etc. All relate to data. Okay, because the set of data give us, because like human, when we learn something, basically we absorbing different type of data into our brain. Okay, and then we have knowledge, and then from the knowledge we react. So it's exactly like what we got in our industry. Doesn't matter what industry. In the future, we go to many other sub-industry. It's the same concept. Okay, but the different process and procedure. That's what it is. So I think it's super important to have that. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe now a question for you, Jack. A bit earlier, Robert mentioned the importance of creating value for the clients, the maritime company, but also the importer-exporter. One thing which is quite striking to me is that if you have this collaboration, you also expand the type of people you are talking to. And probably if you are a container operator, terminal operator like yourself, instead of, let me be a bit caricatural here, instead of talking THC evolution with the liners, you will maybe be also able to talk to the BCO that you are not used to talk to. So what does this change in terms of ability to talk to other parts of the supply chain, and which value can it bring to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. And if you look at our gateway facilities, in many of our locations, we are the key entry or exit point for an entire nation's global seaborne trade. And so with that comes a responsibility not only to operate an efficient facility for the liners, but as Robert has pointed out, making sure that those internal supply chains can continue to flow through the port. So what digitalization has done for us in the availability of data, it's really enabled us to reach out and to have much more virtual conversation with the BCO community that we're serving, right? So the ability for us to provide real-time information in terms of what is happening on the facility and what's happening with an importer or an exporter's cargo, the ability for us to remove paperwork from transactions in many of our facilities has really helped to make those transactions and remove the friction in those transactions between us and the BCOs. It's also enabled us in certain locations to really be able to create customized data sets that we can push to customers in a way that we never have before, right? So we're able to speak with BCOs, understand exactly what information they need and when, and because it's all digitalized, we're able to push this out to them as they need. We have an API store that we promote globally that allows customers to choose exactly what information they want to see, and that's something we could never do before, right? I mean, you can't take all those phone calls. In Elizabeth, New Jersey, we have 5,000 truckers come into the facility every day. And so without a digital solution, you could not keep that gate flowing the way that it needs to keep cargo moving. So I think that's been a really great enabler for us. And I think ultimately where this will go is where the customers lead us, right? I mean, the BCOs have a need. It's important that we service that part of the stakeholder community. And so where they need to take this, that's where we'll go in the future.
Thank you very much. Maybe a question for you, Robert. You mentioned before that it's also all about creating value and making money with digital. So can you give us examples of investments that you have done in digital that you think are creating value for Yieldport? Are there examples of your client asking stuff and you think that if you develop this digital product, they will pay you something on top? Can you give us a bit your perspective here on value creation?
Thank you. When I started my first port, basically it was an old shipyard 20 years ago. There was nothing, no digitalization, no equipment. So while I am working and I'm learning, and what demands comes from the customers and what we need to do for that. So we saw that in our investment, initially automation and then the decarbonization and then the digitalization. Now we are talking high-level digitalization like AI, robotics, all kind of technologies. So we need to adapt this. We need to be very flexible and open. If we don't invest, you will be like dinosaurs and you will be disappearing in the industry because ships are getting bigger, equipment needs to be faster. So everybody talks in here digitalization data, but we have all kind of data. Everyone's need is different type. So if I go walk through this hall, each vendor, they focus is on different data. So for us, the data, is it a purpose or is it a tool or is it any kind of things to go from A to B? So everybody's need is different. So from the perspective of investor, as a port owner, my job, as I said, just make money. How do we make money? And how to maximize it? So digitalization is part of it. All the equipments here, we see many things. Most of it is digitalization, planning, automation, technology. We don't see the conventional things much. Everybody focus on these things. If you go to the wheels or the rails or the wire ropes, people don't spend so much time in there. But a lot of people I see walk around, I see spending time on the technology sides. They want to learn because things are getting so old quickly. So we need to catch up with the future. So from that perspective, as a port owner, we need to keep up the technology and invest. What we did, we put SAP, for example, to make all the terminals to get standardization, okay? In the data entry, we put documentations, billing, all this standardization under SAP and the things. We use Navis N4, for example. We started close to 20 years ago. And since then, all the ports are installed terminal operating system. Before every terminal I bought, they had no terminal operating systems. So, and then you get the equipment, then you see I need the gate automation. I need, for example, crane OCR. I need, the accident avoidance systems in the terminals. How do we turn around the truck entry and exit, the time to shorten because of congestions in the terminal? So every problem has a solution by the mainly technology, and we invest. Why we invest for this? Just to keep the customer satisfied. Otherwise, they immediately give you a notice and they go to another terminal. So, as I said, we are not the liner terminals. So I need to keep the customers happy, and competition is in there. So you are competing with the other terminal operators, and you are trying to give the best productivity in the berth side, gate side, yard side to do all. Like truck drivers complaints, liners complaints, brokers, everyone. So you need to satisfy everything. So we need to keep investing for productivity, efficiency, and that comes with the digitalization. But that costs money. I cannot increase my tariffs to the liners. Hey, I'm investing for you. They say they don't care. So you need to do the cost cutting. How much we can do cost cutting? For that reason, we invest in digitalization for cost cutting purpose. We invest in digitalization to satisfy customers and satisfy the employees, because if you don't keep your employees not happy in the terminal, they go somewhere else. So they want, working in the high-tech environment. So even though, like you mentioned, we are behind of many industries in the digitalization, but maybe we started late, but doesn't mean that we will be behind. This is like marathon. We will catch up. I believe so, because industry is in there. I see so many companies are investing to help the ports, to help the container business. So this is like endless marathon. We will be keep running, not walking, and investing. So more the money we make, more do we invest. That's why these conferences handle 2, 3, 4 times a year in different place, just to get the people's investments, money. The idea is selling, and we buy these and we sell it to our customers. So the system must keep going.
Yeah, very interesting to see this complementarity between digital to reduce costs, digital to stay on top of your game, make your client happy, they stay with you, but also digital for your employees, safety, etc. We'll come back to that later on in 15 minutes from now. I would like us to take 10 minutes to discuss a bit more about interoperability and standardization, and I will start with you, Boris, to understand a bit what are the challenges you have to overcome, and concretely, how difficult is your life, Boris? How do you put people around the table to discuss about common standards?
Thank you, David. I think that the starting point is we have created an organization which has a very good DNA, because precisely we bring together the two sides for this collaboration, and this is where it happened a bit accidentally, because I proposed to create a round table about standards at the PIMA forum, actually, and I had Freeport present, and that's why we proposed then we should bring both sides together to discuss how we're going to bring standards to the industry. But it is the challenge has not been so much to actually bring these people together, because the association is doing very well. We're growing constantly. We have about 60 members now. Probably after I leave this talk, we'll have 65. So we have no problem to attract and bring people who see the necessity for the industry to come together and collaborate. I think where we see the problems, it is also not to create the standards. We have a dynamic, and if you go on the TIC 4.0 website, you will see we publish every quarter. And the more we publish, the more people come and want to apply and join. So the real challenge will be adoption of the standards, okay? And because you can create the best standard in the world, But everybody's a bit like a sheep looking at who is going to do it first and who is going to actually implement it. And you need not one company to do it. You need a few, and to create that snowball effect. So this is what keeps me really up at night. It's not about growing the association. It's not about delivering on what the association purpose is in terms of producing the best standards for our industry, because I have the best people in the industry, in the association, collaborating to create these standards. So that's not the problem. The problem is, and that's actually why we're doing this kind of panel, is where I want to make sure we build this awareness at the highest level of the companies, is at some point then, we need the big players to say, okay, I'm going to adopt the standard because I know the standard is good. I know the standard will help us to, especially if the whole industry adopt it, will help us to actually progress faster towards digitalization. I know that if I'm Robert Yildirim, for example, if I adopt these standards, Konecranes, Navis, everybody will say, yes, of course, we will also adopt it, and we will sell you our products which integrate the TIC 4.0 standard, so that in your terminals then, or in my terminals, if I continue to role play being a Robert Yildirim, in my terminals then, it's very easy to implement an automation project, a digitalization project, because I know that with the TIC 4.0 standards embedded or actually translated through an API, everything becomes plug and play. So I have removed a very big obstacle in an automation project or a digitalization project, because I know that all the systems can communicate. So that was in short what keeps me up at night, and I hope we get there, and that we'll talk about it in future panels. Thank you.
And maybe David, give us your perspective. How important is it for you to have these standards? I imagine with your variety of clients, having some type of standardization will make your life easier, but also will enable you to deliver better service. How do you see this question, and what do you think can be done to foster the adoption of these standards?
Yeah, the standard is our language. If we don't speak the same language, we cannot communicate. So it's very easy. No language, no communication, and therefore it's a must-have. And I totally agree what Boris said. I think the TIC 4.0, this collaboration between manufacturers, suppliers, and then of course the port operators is perfect. We need to agree in there what the standard is, and then really use it, and then we speak the same language, and then we have a big problem solved. So I think from the technology standpoint, we are already on a good level. We have the definitions, we have the language, we have the technology which allows us to bring the data from one point to the other. We have interfaces to share. Maybe not everything perfect, but still, in my opinion, on a good track. I think what we shouldn't forget are then the people working in the different organizations. Because my experience is from our internal process, but also when I look at customers, people were asking for certain dashboards, for certain live information for many years, and then we provided them, or the technology provided them, and then people had issues with using them, because their daily process is another one. And I think we're talking a lot about how we can make money or how the technology is, but if we have solved that, I think the next challenge which waits for us are the people. And in my experience, or when I'm looking back, what gives me sleepless nights is, how do we then change really the processes in our organizations that we then really make the difference.
Interesting. Let us now get the perspective of the terminal operators. And Maxime and Jacques, curious to hear you. I imagine you have a variety of terminals in your portfolio in each of your companies. You have tons of suppliers and clients. So how do you see the importance of having such standards? I imagine that if you have very different standards of data communication, it drives cost and complexity. But how do you see, again, the adoption of these standards within your company, and any ideas on what could be done to foster the adoption of standards? maybe Jack, if you had to start, yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll start. And just to be, direct about this, right? This conversation about standards has been going on for quite a while, right? So this is not new and didn't even start with digitalization, right? This has been a problem for decades since we started moving containers. What I would say is quite frankly, this is just a huge headache for APM terminals, and it's a significant source of waste when we think about the ongoing requirements to continue to modernize and invest and grow as a terminal operator. So the amount of energy that goes into some of the most inane discussions I've ever had about, how do we make this system interface with that system, and what about this PLC with that PLC, and back to the point David made earlier, well, this is my data. No, that's not my data. If we can't progress beyond these conversations, what ends up happening is we are all spending more money than we should, so there's value leakage from me as a terminal operator to somebody else in the transaction. And ultimately what this really is going to do is stifle growth and modernization of the industry. So we're running out of ugly beaches that we can turn into really pretty terminals in the world. And the change that really needs to continue to happen to support global trade is to continue to modernize what are now 20, 30, 40-year-old facilities. This becomes extremely expensive and has a huge amount of risk if we don't start to introduce more of these standards. So I'm with Boris. I think that the question is not one of do we have the right technology, do we have the right capability to do that. It really comes down to adoption and having people step forward and take a bit of a leadership role and say this is the way I'm doing this, and be super transparent about it. Right, so for us, the standard about how a OCR is supposed to eventually communicate with a TOS, right? This is not secret, right? I'll give it to anybody who wants to see it, and here you go do that too. So I think we as operators need to take a bit of responsibility for creating that adoption roadmap and getting us further up the curve there.
Thank you very much, Maxime. Any remarks? Any different perspective from DPW?
I don't have much to add. I actually agree with both of you, and I think we must collaborate. And it's not because of we are competing, but because we need to close the gap to the other industry that they ahead of us. And earlier you asked about what value digitalization is going to create. I can tell you, I don't know what value, but I can imagine how much it's going to cost us if we don't do it. So, and someone will move in our space. So I think it's a must from our perspective.
Okay. While you have the mic, let me switch to the question of future of work in port and terminals. Let's switch to the question of future of work in port and terminals. I would like to hear you about, how is concretely how digital is concretely impacting the life of the employees at DPW, from yourself to the crane operator, to the trucker doing drayage, etc., to the people monitoring the reefer plug. I imagine that their life today is very different from the one of yesterday, and probably very different from what it will be today. Do you have some perspective on how it will impact the people within your organization? Is it something you are thinking about?
Yeah. Actually, I can address it a little bit in the broader perspective. There's this saying about 21st century and literacy, and then there's a saying that illiterate person in the 21st century is not the person that doesn't know how to write and read, but the person that doesn't know how to unlearn and learn again. And I think for my generation and the older generation, that is the name of the game. We need to unlearn how we do the business and apply the new technology and all that. So that's a challenge for all existing workforce because we are in this transition stage. But I think from the wider perspective, we need to also prepare for the new generation that come. When I grow up playing with the trucks and forklifts, and world is moving from labor to more mechanized, and I was exposed to the joystick and playing with the cranes and all those stuff. Interface of the new generation is quite different. They don't see the joysticks, they don't see their interface to the real world is visual and touch and completely different. I think from that perspective, we also need to prepare to attract the workforce in that way. And in certain countries, and I think worldwide, we are going to end up competing for the workforce. And I'll give you an example when we operate in Vancouver and downtown, and our industry is traditionally a rough industry and predominantly male industry, right? But we don't have enough workforce, so we need to change work environment to attract. It's not just digitalization. We need to put ourselves in the pair with the other industry, banking sector and everything, create an environment that is attractive to operate in there. And then that's how we attract it. And I think the final one where digitalization is really going to help, which is this equality, diversion, and inclusion. And we, as you know, DP World is the SDGs in accordance with the United Nations. Then we are going to create opportunity to the digital world, to the people that weren't able to participate in our industry. And from the selfish reason, we are going to increase our working pool in the future. So that's kind of my perspective, if you will.
Very interesting. David, any perspective on this notion of how can you help both be attractive for new generations, but also upskill the current workforce, change the mindset, bring new knowledge, new ways of working? You mentioned that as being one of the challenges you are facing. Tell us a bit more.
Yeah, in my opinion, two things to consider. The workforce. How do we keep them happy? What can we do in the future? Is we need to make sure that they don't have to step up the cranes anymore, and that it's remotely semi-automated, fully automated. I think we are in since many years. The industry itself is making good progress there. Not reached the last level yet. Maybe in the ports on the stacking cranes, but maybe not so much on the ship-to-shore cranes. But I know that the whole industry is working on that. So providing the labor a decent workplace it's a must. It's a must do. How I see how we can really. What I said before is that if you have the technology and when you are able to provide dashboards and widgets to and also notification, whatever reports to people, and they are still not using it in their daily life, I think that the good answer I don't have. I'm still searching for it. But I think the more you automate processes in the companies and also share those processes partly between customers and suppliers will help us in optimizing the entire workforce. And when we do that, I think people will automatically at one point get more and more adjusted to it. So more automation in how we share the data, also of course artificial intelligence, even if I don't want to push that too much, because when we look where we stand and when we are still talking about how do we share data and how do we collaborate, I think AI is then still too far away, but at one point it will come, and I'm looking forward to that, because I think that will push us to the next level.
Okay, thank you very much. Robert, you want to share something around training and skills?
I was going to make comments on the Boris standardization. I don't think the standardization will come so easy or will never come. Everything is in the world has competition. For example, we use our smartphones, either you use iOS or Android. And charging
But
system.
you have only 2 standards in this case. That's
Exactly.
better
So
than
I'm saying
300.
that for Boris to helping, don't think only the one that will be fascism. Democracy has alternatives, solutions. So that will be difficult to set standardization, but you can put the guidance from A to B, how to go is better, but people will do their way. Nobody will adapt. If you, like today I'm asking same question to ChatGPT or Copilot or the Gemini, I don't get the same answers, okay? Same artificial intelligence, how they do it. So the ports for APMT or DP world is different mentality, and for me is different. They think big, we think maybe small, niche, boutique type of operations. So there will be some classifications in the standardization, a guidance, but it will be very, very difficult to adapt if TIC4 puts something and everybody will follow. So that's what I was trying to say, but it will be a good that someone is working for the industry under the certain KPIs, targets, discipline, many things, and we can follow and we can do localization, because in US ports are operated different than Europe or in Africa and something. So you can make 70%, 80% standardization. Other 20, 30% will be localization, either language or tax purpose or the custom way of handling, many other things. So that's why I'm saying standardization can come up to 70, 80%. After that is freedom.
Yeah.
That was my comment for
No,
the
that's
board.
interesting. Boris, how do you see this equilibrium? So how do you combine standardization and the importance of acknowledging the difference between different realities, business, geos, etc.?
Well, I think first of all, what TIC 4.0 is trying to do is not to fix a certain way of doing things. Let me give you an analogy. We all speak English, but it's our common language that we actually use as a standard to communicate. But you're from Turkey, I'm from France. Maxime, I don't know where you're from, but you're not from England. Okay, Jack, you're American. In your case, it's your native language, okay? But in all our cases, it's not our native language. It's the language we use to communicate. And I think it's actually a very good analogy for what we want TIC to be. TIC 4.0 is not trying to impose a way of doing things and as a standard. It's just creating a standard way for communication so that we all understand each other. And this analogy goes the same way with systems and equipment. We want them to communicate in a way that they understand each other. What we do with the language, this is where we put all our brand on it. You have the Yieldport way of doing things. APMT has the APMT way and DP way. So everybody uses the language in a different way, but at least we speak the same language. So that's what we're trying to achieve.
Thank you for the analogy. I think it's quite clear. Thank you, Boris. Last question of this panel. Coming back to something which is on top of the preoccupation of the terminal industry and has been since I would say the beginning, which is the question of safety. And maybe this question for you, Jack, I know it's very important to you. Can you tell us a bit, how digitization is part of improving the working condition and the safety at APMT?
Yeah, first, thanks for asking the question. This is obviously super important to us. And something that really goes into the thinking about how it is that we're going to leverage, whether it be digitalization or any technology for that matter. But what is undeniable is that when we introduce more digitalization, more automation into our operations, the level of safety that we have in those operations is dramatically different than when in our conventional operations. So where we've retrofitted equipment. We're seeing 70, 80%, 90% reductions in incident rates, even in potential incident rates. So this is a tremendous benefit to the entire stakeholder community, whether it be employer, whether it be employee, whether it be the truckers from the outside, whomever's engaged in trade in our facilities. So it shouldn't be overlooked. It really is a driver in terms of how we think about how we want to deploy technology across the facilities. I think the other thing to say about this, aside from just the pure incident rates, the ergonomic environments that we're now able to put our colleagues into for their daily lives is dramatically changed from what it was before. So we take people that have to drive around in diesel machines, bumps in the road, noise, pollution, and move them out of that environment and put them again into a more modern office environment. It just creates a tremendously improved work experience for them, helps us to recruit, addresses issues around diversity. So where we have done these sorts of things, the diversity of our workforce is dramatically different than in our conventional operations. So net, as I said, this is really a key benefit across the stakeholder community and something actually that we're quite proud of as an outcome of these investments that we're making.
Thank you very much for this very positive note to conclude these discussions. Thank you to the panelists. We have covered quite a wide spectrum of topics today. We have 10 more minutes, and if somebody in the room is willing to ask a question to one or multiple of our panelists, please feel free. Yes, I see a hand here.
Hi, good morning. I'm Ramana from Avellino, and I like Maxim's statement, literacy about unlearning and relearning. So I would like to ask basically Robert and Jack a question. Traditionally, let's take an example of any rules-based engine, the operator learned that if an RTG was over a block or a bay, that's where I'm going to stack my next container that's discharged. And if today's systems or machine learning is telling you, no, if you stack the container here, you're going to increase the rehandle count, therefore the RTG should be taken to the next block. And that's about then them not trusting their instinct, what they've been doing for 15, 20 years, and letting machines tell them what to do. Has that been a challenge in your organizations, Jack and or Robert? I know DP World has been very gracious to adopt AI. We have seen the changes, but we'd love to hear how APMT or Yieldports are looking at the challenge.
I think, so whether it's that particular example, and I could probably give 1,000 others, right, in terms of the way that digitalization forces change across the organizations in terms of process. So whether it be the operator in the machine, or whether it be the dispatcher sitting in the office trying to figure out which truck should go where. I think what it speaks to, though, is the fact that regardless of the technology, so we could have AI, you can have crane OCR, you can have every laser you want and every piece of hang every gadget you want on a machine. Ultimately, though, if all you're doing is hanging gadgets or gathering data, you're just creating more noise. And so if, as an organization, we don't put time and energy and thought into that change management that you have to bring everybody through to actually get them to understand that, okay, with this information, I now need to do X, Y, or Z. That's really where all the value creation comes from. So it's just like any other human experience going through change, right? There's a curve that people need to go through. You need to be able to communicate effectively, talk about the how and the why and what's going to happen and what it should look like. So as organizations, unless you're willing to go through that investment, it makes no sense to make the investment in the technology, because then you just end up with the same results and it looks a little fancier on a dashboard.
Thank
From Yieldport perspective, I don't know how my operators do really, but what I'm thinking is the discharging from vessel to yard, it's easy because the vessel plan comes and the terminal operating system is making the sequence of operations. Work order goes to the QCs and the RTGs. But the problem comes, customers, if they're not having appointment which container will come and pick, that creates problem. And especially in certain countries, they don't have appointment systems, and the guy comes, containers in the bottom, you have to do a lot of shifting and stuff. That creates problem. I agree with you. That's why we are investing more in the digitalization. Thanks God, AI is going to help us, because some of the operators, they have egos and they think they know everything, so they make their own way and creates problem. And when you walk into your terminal and you see that your machines are working, but you don't know what they do exactly, so that maybe do a lot of unnecessary shuffling things to get the bottom container to customers and cost you a lot of money. So hopefully these things will disappear slowly with the new tools introduced to industry, AI or something else, or the machine learning and a lot of other, the internet technologies. Hopefully, if everything is controlled by the technology, then I believe that all the terminals will have a very smooth and productive, low-cost operations. Today, I don't think terminals are doing well. I see some of the vessel comes from the Asia. In China, they load because ship has to go, and a lot of ships come. Sometimes we do the shuffling in our terminal to take and make the vessel planning corrections in the certain terminals, and this is again is planning, but hopefully sooner new versions will solve these problems, and then the RTG doesn't have to go to the other bay and do something. Everything will be in sequence.
Thank you, Robert. You have a question?
Hi, thanks for your insightful panel. It's really been wonderful. I'm Guido from DCSA, and I have a question for mainly the terminal gentleman, or mainly Jack, because I was really appreciative about your comment about data ownership and saying, hey, we've had these discussions for the past couple of years or maybe even decades. But I still think that data will need to come from the data owner, in a sense that that is the purest source of truth. But I also know that we're still at the forefront of adoption. So that data ownership is sometimes a little bit difficult. Some people still send emails, some still work with Excel files. So how is that for you right now? Is there still effort in trying to find that single source of truth, in trying to find the right data? Because we are now in the forefront also of creating AI tooling and ETA predictions, etc. I could imagine that a data overflow of ETA predictions from 5 different sources could only confuse the ecosystem rather than enforce it. So how's your view on that?
Yeah, it's a good question and fairly broad. I think I would just say a couple things. I think that what drives our thought process around what data we need is really goes back to the business case and what we're going to do with it at the end of the day. So we've moved away from this idea that we just want everything that we can get, every 1 and 0. We just want to see all that data. For us, as you said, that just really becomes very cumbersome and doesn't add a lot of value. So the way we think about it is, okay, I want to create X result or I want to solve Y problem. What is the data that I need to do that? And then where do I get that from that's the best source of truth? And we, as APM terminals, we want to go as far down into the chain as possible to get the source data. it creates problems around aggregation and how you bring it all together, and especially when we look across terminals. But that's generally the way we think about it. So we try to cut through some of the noise and some of the choices we have by being very specific about what's the problem we're trying to solve. Right? So hopefully that answers the question.
We have time for 2 more questions. So, any, please?
Hello, my name is Gintaras from Klaipėda Smelter Container Terminal. Very nice, let's say, presentation and discussion about different topics about automatization, digitalization, and etc. My question is, what kind of challenges you have with cybersecurity? Because all these things, let's say, can create really headaches for the terminals. Thank you.
Good topic that we did not address.
That is problem of everybody, even us, our cell phones and ports, banks, even CIA has problem, everybody, central banks. So there is no way to solve this, because more do you add the security, hackers develop something to break it if they have the mentality to break and enter the system. But this will be, of course, will continue forever. No matter what we do, when you look at the cyber attacks in the world map, China is attacking the US attacking Russia. So this is a game. What we can do, we can buy the available tools to, we feel that our system is secure, but it's never secure. Nothing is 100% proved. So I would say we do our best to give everybody feeling-wise secure. I don't know APMT and DP roles, what they do, but it's impossible.
That's a perfect answer.
Okay. Maurice?
Just a perspective. If of course I'm defending TIC, so if we all adopt the same language, then we can also have, companies which will develop very good security tools for that language, because there's one. Okay, as I said, what you do with the language is your problem, but we can protect more one standard than if everybody has their own standard. That's I'm not sure it's a perfect answer, but it's one perspective, because there will be focus on how to actually limit on the TIC language the risk of having cyber attacks, of penetrating it.
We have reached the end of our session. We can maybe take one last. The organizers are kind enough to let us continue for 5 more minutes. So if there is a last question, happy to take it.
Yeah.
Oh, please, sir.
Yeah. Hello. Thanks for your talk. I just had a question on, in general, maybe for the terminal operators. How, I guess with TIC, the idea would be that you could simplify a lot of the work that you need to do. For example, to put a new TOS, a new GOS, a new ECS into your terminals, which I think is one of the reasons why one of the reasons why you might stick to some technology is because you don't have the easiness to switch to a different one, because the standards are not there. Like maybe you need to get an extra month of discussions between your IT departments or your suppliers to actually come up with the right way of integrating something. So I wonder, once you have these standards in place, how do you see that relationship with the suppliers changing to suddenly maybe more suppliers are easier to connect to now than you used to before, which means that you have more competition, more potentially more access to new technology than before. Thank you.
I can take this one too. I can give you an analogy. If you are in the industrial controls, and if you go back to ADs, and I know ABB, General Electric, and Siemens sitting here, and they all have their own PLC, they all have their own drive, and they all have that close technology, and they thought they are better than. I wouldn't say. Probably they thought that's their competitive advantage, and that's why they call. Some of them are not on the market anymore, and that attitude doesn't get you far. So from terminal perspective, what we want to have a common platform. We are going heavily towards automation. We want to be the manufacturer to be compatible. We wanted to operate on the same platform, so we are not supplier locked, for example, and we are not going in this dry run of the technology. And when we buy equipment for 15 or 20 years. So we want to make sure that, we have example inside DP World where we went in the one way, and then when we change equipment, it's a massive effort. It's essentially from the lean point, you create a massive waste if you don't standardize. So that's why we are driven and why we are supporting the standardization, and then the ease of integration, commonality, and then in a sense optimizing the acquiring those equipment. So that's why we are supporting, and that's where we see the open platform and standardization is the way to go.
Thank you.
Just to add on this, I mean, thank you for this question. I said it in simple terms. What we want, the vision is how do we create a more plug and play environment in our industry, and because I believe, and this is a message to all the suppliers here, and as I said, many are already members of the association, but they are members because I think they agree with this statement. You're not selling a product and a solution where your competitive advantage is how well you're going to integrate to your client's systems. That shouldn't be the factor for selling your product. You should be selling a product on the merits of what your products brings to your client, okay? And that's why we try to take away the cost, the risk, and the time that is required when you buy a new solution, that it has to then integrate to the rest of your ecosystem. Okay, and if that is mostly eliminated, then the focus can be on you compare the solutions or products you want to buy really on the basis of their merits, not on how easily or how expensive or cheap it's going to be to integrate them.
Thank you. We will now conclude this discussion. Thank you to all of our panelists for joining this very interesting discussion. Thank you to all of you for attending this meeting. I hope it was interesting to you and helpful to you, and hope to see you soon in another conference. Thank you.